Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the decks winning in the Pokemon 151 format. Obviously, we've just had Peoria, which is a massive tournament, and it's just as 151 is legal. So this is going to be the first big tournament we can take a look at to sort of dissect which lists are winning, what new cards have come in. Let's take a look and break it down. We're going to look at the top 8, maybe slightly higher, depending on the lists. There's quite a few lists. The Miraidons, very similar in the top 8. So we might take a look at some Charizards, as one did just miss out. Austin Daniels came in 10th, so we will take a look at that as well. But let's start... Actually, let's start at the end. So let's start with Austin Daniels. Let's take a look at some Charizard. So let's take a look at the list here. It is the variation with Pidgeot, which has proved quite popular. Personally, I prefer the... I think it was in a Japanese tournament we saw Gardevoir become quite popular with the Curliers. And then, actually not Gardevoir, the Gallade, because you can use Buddy Catch to find your supporters. Very similar to what Pidgeot does. But this one, obviously, you've got that big 2-prizer on your bench. It does give you the free pivot of a free retreater, but I've started playing Mew EX in mine anyway. It's just got a ton of good matchups. So there are a few variations, but this one has come out on top in this tournament. It's got the 8 fire energy. It's got no special energy, which is all good to see. No magma basin. So there's a few variations we've seen before. There is a choice belt and a defiance band to help you hit those numbers, which I do think can be quite important. I've played it a few times and the early game can feel very, very rough with Charizard. Obviously, you've got stuff like Entei and probably about it really to attack early on. You could maybe power up the Radiant Charizard with Charizard EX, but you might as well just use... It does hit slightly harder, so you can take a knockout on Vs. So there are ways around it to get those early knockouts, but in general, with this deck, you're normally going to fall behind. Lost City is an interesting one. It does run 1 Super Rod. You normally run 2, so you're not going to be able to reuse your Charizards or Pidgeots if they're knocked out. So yeah, normally with the Stage 2 decks, you don't see something like Lost City, so that's quite interesting. In general, a very interesting list. We've got the 2 Seal Stones, obviously taking full advantage of the Entei in the list. And the Lumineon. Yeah, nothing too crazy in there. It's got the 2 Mew, so it's got the 2 Vacuum, which I always play. I think I always try and match up the amount of Mews with the amount of Vacuums I play, because with stuff like this in Gardevoir, it's just so good to be able to find those with Mew. But that is the Charizard list. So Charizard EX finding a place in the current metagame. Let's take a look at 8th. We've actually got a Chien-Pao, which I'm very happy to see as well. I'm not sure which variation. Oh wow, so it doesn't play Pidgeot, it doesn't play Arceus, it doesn't play Palkia. It's pure Chien-Pao, it's got Baxcalibur, a 3-2 line. I feel like with all the space, you might as well go for the 3-3. You got the 2-2 Bibarel, so you've got Iono Proof, you've got the Radiant Greninja, and then Manaphy. So not many Pokemon in this list, a ton of energy, a ton of cards to switch Pokemon with stuff like Cross Switcher. You've got Superior, so it's a fairly standard list, but then you've got those tricks with stuff like Cancelling Clone to bring up a Manaphy, Cancelling Clone, and then Greninja for some knockouts. I've played this list, it's very strong, it's very quick, it's very cheeky in some of the stuff it can do. So yeah, this is obviously a very popular one. It's just nice to see Chien-Pao in the top 8, honestly. I think it's a really cool card, and I'm glad it's finally getting some respect. In at number 7, we've got Gardevoir, the only Gardevoir in the top 8. Probably my favorite deck at the moment. I just think it can do a lot of stuff. You have a lot of good matchups. It comes down to how you play it normally, which is always a good feeling. And you don't mind going first or second with this one, honestly. Let's take a look at the list, though. It looks fairly standard. I mean, this is almost the 60 I play. I've added the Mew EX in now. I do run the 1 Worker and 1 Research, and then I've got a Pal Pad in there. That's maybe the only difference of our list. 4 Fog Crystal is quite strange. You normally only run 2, so they are really up in that. Just the 2 Rare Candy, so they're planning to go either through Mirage Step or the Long Haul with the Curliers, which I don't think is terrible. This deck doesn't mind going behind. You obviously get the reversal energy usage there, and it's very easy to come back with some 1-prizes. Yeah, time and time again, Gardevoir has proven itself, and yeah, this seems no different. Next up, we've actually got Charizard, but not the EX. We've got the Radiant version in a Lost Box. So we've obviously got the Lost Zone in there. You've got the Ditto to sort of guarantee a Comfy or to get out it's probably going to be a comfy, honestly. Just guarantees that good start. Really interesting techs here. So we've got the Articuno, so the Cramorant's hitting 120. We've got the Hawlucha to drop some extra damage. Even Spiritomb in here, so yeah, it's just a box of good stuff that you need. Only 5 energy worries me a little. I guess you don't really need it. I mean, you need 1 for the Charizard. You can't really get him going much quicker because I'm sure you're going to have used that energy or probably want to power up a Sableye. Only 1 Super Rod as well. I'd maybe like to see another Super Rod in there. The Raihan obviously there for the same reason, but I don't know. You could easily lose some of these energy to the Lost Zone, but obviously it's worked out for him. Obviously a very good player because this list it feels too risky for me. I don't know if I could actually play this at a tournament. Yeah, I don't know. I always like to not max out, but I like to have maybe as much as I need or maybe slightly more than I need just to avoid those, yeah, just having stuff prized or losing these to the Lost Zone. There's a few things that could happen which don't feel great. But in general, obviously a great list. Has the Sableye and Charizard for late game, and then Cramorant hitting for some big numbers early on. Always a good deck, Lost Zone. You can't really go wrong with it. Then we've got a few Miraidon. So we've got Jesse Parker and JW. I think their lists are almost identical. JW played the Mew EX. Jesse didn't. Jesse had the extra Iono. That's the only things I could see. There might be a few other little things, but let's take a look at the list as this is quite a popular deck these days. Obviously, Miraidon, we've got Flaffy to accelerate energy, Raichu and Raikou to take some knockouts, and then we've got the Flying Pikachu still as the pivot. I thought we might see Mew EX. I just think you can't accelerate to it, so it's a little more difficult in this deck. But you can use Flaffy to accelerate. You can't use your electric generators, but there is still ways to power up the Mew. So I'd like to see Mew EX in place of the Pikachu. I think it does a similar job. You've obviously still got the Raikou and Raichu for the Forest Seal Stone. Path to the Peak does hurt you a little then, but you don't have to use the ability. It's just got a really powerful attack and the free pivot, which is the only reason Pikachu's really here. You do maybe attack with it now and again just to stall, but I don't know. I think Mew would have been fine in this. Other than that, fairly standard. A ton of energy, electric generators. They're going to path you. They're going to draw through quickly and the start, take an early knockout with stuff like Squawkabilly. And yeah, just sort of snowball from there. It's a very powerful deck. It's a deck I would suggest if you're just coming into the game. It's very easy to pilot. I'd say maybe check this one out. Just flood the board with energy and take big knockouts. Sounds pretty good. Does what it does. This is a fairly standard list. Nothing sort of jumping out at me here. This is sort of similar to what I would play. I do like the Zapdos from Pokemon Go. I'm glad we didn't see the Zapdos from Pokemon 151 because I just don't think it fits the deck or the style. It's too slow. You need the Hawlucha. There needs to be setup. I just think this is a better list. So let's, like I say, JW very similar. Let's take a look at the Mew EX because this one I did watch this match. This one was slightly different. So it's got the Luxray V. It just means with stuff like Grabber, you can pull out Pokemon from their hand. You can get rid of their supporter cards. Once you put them down with like a Judge or a Path, and you can really trap them. You can obviously discard the hand Iono. There's so many ways to just thin their hand, take away everything they have, and leave them with nothing. Where Mew can draw through its deck freely. Obviously, you got the 4 vacuum, so you can draw on your turn, then path again. There's just a lot to love about this deck. It's very much, it feels almost like a control Mew, and with stuff like Box of Disaster and other things, there's a few texts in there that make it a little more interesting. The thing about Mew is, no matter what people say, however low it's ranked on tier lists, it is always going to perform. So if you go into a tournament, you need to make sure that Mew matchup is shored up because it is always going to appear. It is always going to win. Not necessarily win the whole tournament, but there'll be some powerful decks out there like this that just keep on winning because nothing seems to keep Mew down. We've had Drapion, we've had Spiritomb, we've had so many variations to try and stop this deck, but it just doesn't work. It is unstoppable, and yeah, showing it again there in 3rd place. And then the top 2 lists, let's just take a quick look if they're similar. So we've got the Raikou Dragonite, and then we've got a Kyogre list. So okay, Kyogre, Zamazenta, so they are very different. They're taking advantage of the Lost Zone to power up their Pokemon. In this case, powering up a Dragonite early on to take some very quick knockouts and put things in their favor. Obviously aiming for your V Pokemon to quickly race and just outpower you, really. This is one of the good answers for stuff like Miraidon, because it is as aggressive, if not more so. And then obviously we've got the Kyogre Zamazenta version. Zamazenta, an absolute monster, hitting for some big numbers, very tanky Pokemon. And then we've got Kyogre, which can finish off games very quickly. Let's just take a quick look at the list here. Yeah, there's nothing out of the ordinary here. You got the Pidgeot because it can jump back into your deck and use the Forest Seal Stone. And then, like I say, Kyogre to finish games, Zamazenta. I'd maybe like to see another Zamazenta, but it's probably tight on other things. There's a lot of stuff in this list, so yeah, once again, Lost Zone showing its dominance. Well done to Raymond Long. Didn't actually catch the final, unfortunately. You can probably hear my voice. I've had a bit of a cold. I'm finally getting over it, but yeah, it was either watch this or get some rest, and I decided on the rest so I could bring you this video. Hopefully this video has been some help. Let me know in the comments below any decks you've been playing, any of these decks you like the look of. Hopefully this is giving you some idea what's good in the Pokemon 151 format. Obviously things are going to change with Paradox Rift around the corner, but we will take a look at that as and when it arrives. I've got a few deck profiles, including like Charizard EX and other stuff. Like I mentioned in this video, I prefer the Gallade version, and I will be profiling that. So make sure you subscribe if you want to see that. That's all I've got for this episode though, so I will catch you in the next one.